Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who has joined the conference Behavioral Science Summit 2021. My name is Kelvin Kihindas and I am a Senior Research Compliance Officer at Busara Center for Behavioral Economics. I am dialing in from Nairobi, Kenya, and today I will be speaking about ethical considerations in regards to behavioral science or projects or studies that have behavioral science aspect. At Busara Center, what we usually do is we run projects or we apply behavioral science in the global south in alleviating poverty and also maybe helping clients, partners who include the government, who include national non-governmental organization and also private companies, and also we work with academics to see on how we can now apply behavioral science. The first point I want to speak about will be when we are kind of like designing the project, so we're designing the studies using the behavioral science, we make sure that the research design is able now to accommodate what I would say, considerations in terms of having the integrity. What I mean about integrity is all about the research that we are trying to conduct. We should make sure that the integrity and the transparency, it's very clear, and the researchers must make sure that that tendency of conflict of interest has been declared or has been outlined so well in, for example, like in the submission. And we also notice that even the ethical review committees really help researchers to make sure that that integrity of research that is being implemented is of the highest integrity, and it's very transparent. It's very transparent. Another aspect of ethical principle that I would wish to speak about is about participants. We understand about participants in the global south. They're very different compared even to those participants from the global north. I would say this is dependent with the culture and the local context. At Busara Center, what I've seen or what we've seen is researchers from the global north will come to the global south, and they will always, the first thing they will always do is to make sure that the research that we're going to conduct is put into the local context, because now we are the people who understand, the locals are the people who understand really the culture, really the context, really the traditions of that particular community, because now the participants are being drawn from communities where now the studies or the projects are going to be implemented. So when we talk about participants, the researchers should make sure that there is that particular both integrity and both I will call balance, and make sure that there's no bias when now selecting the participants that are going to participate in their studies. And just to add something on the participants also is the researchers should make sure that they should be able now to I will say to make sure that the participants are also respected, and also now their rights and welfare are being respected. And that's why most of the research that we are conducting in the global south in regards to behavioral science must go through now the ethical review process. And now the ethical review process, both in this maybe in the global south countries, and especially where we have conducted most of our studies, including Kenya, including Nigeria, to add, we have Uganda, we have Tanzania, is because now they have different jurisdiction or kind of like governments which now support this research. And so the ethical review process might seem very different from country to country, but now there is kind of like similarities on how these ethical review committees or boards work to make sure that the research that being conducted really respect the participants, the welfare of the participants and the rights of the participants, so that now the researchers cannot push or kind of like get data without coercion. Another thing I would also want to talk about when it comes now to ethical principles of ethics or ethical principles when we are handling research, it will be like the bigger one, or the kind of like the broad one. It's about obtaining consent. And what we have seen is the COVID-19, when COVID-19 now was first reported back in March 2020, we've seen now the makeshift of researchers, the way they're obtaining consent. It's kind of like very, has really changed from now the hard copies now to the verbal or the online. And I would say consenting is such a process. It's not just about I as a researcher, I come to I bring in a respondent or a participant, and then I tell them a little bit about my research, and then now I make sure that they have resigned and continue. No, the whole process is about I myself as a researcher now giving all the information about the project or the research now to the participant, and make sure that the participant has understood what the process, what the research is all about before they make the decision to participate in the research. And something to also add on consenting will be about translation, to make sure that, and that's why when I talked about local contextualization, I meant also making sure that the research is also translated into the languages where participants can understand and can comprehend before making an informed decision of participating in my research or not. Another thing I would wish to speak, just maybe before I move on, I would also maybe add little information about consenting, which now is all about how do researchers handle or store the consent they have received from the research, from the participants. This now involves, if the study was all about face-to-face or in-person data collection, then now these hard copies, how are they transported now from the field now to the offices or to the satellite offices where now they need to be stored, and then how long they're going now to be stored, as the research is continuing. And then another aspect will be like, how do you now get the research the consent when it's kind of like verbal. For example, like it's not in-person data collection, but now it's through the phone calls, it's through the other means of data collection, which is not now in-person data collection. Something else I would wish to talk about is about confidentiality. And when we want to conduct research, it's all about most of parts of research really concerns about participants. And now we should be able now to give more information about the research to the participants. And now when participants are going to have made that particular decision now to participate in our study, it's now where we now need also now to make sure they understand that we researchers will be able now to keep the information that we're going to collect private, and also ensure that they understand we have that confidentiality clause, that no one else apart from the third party, or no one else from the research team will be able now to access their data, and especially their personal identifiable information, which can be used in another way, which was not really intended for the research. So we must make sure that the privacy and the confidentiality of data that we are collecting from participants is well ensured and well taken care of, and making sure that as researchers also, what we must make sure the respondents understand is about the benefits of the studies that are being implemented. And this is not about what I've seen some researchers maybe confusing between the benefits and the incentives, or what I would call reimbursements. So the benefits is all about what's the end game, or what is the output of this particular project. So for example, we have seen so many projects coming in the global south, and these projects now will help to bring up or to develop policies, for example, in health, in education, in environment and climate kind of changes. So we must make sure the respondents understand what are the benefits of them participating in these behavioral science projects. Another thing I would wish to put across is all about risk of harm. Sometimes researchers will go to an extent to make sure that they want, or they get the data that they want, by putting even participants in a great harm. So we must make sure that as researchers, that the participants are protected at all costs, even when they are participating in the proposed studies, so that we don't make mistakes that we've seen back in the day, e.g. in Tuskegee, back in the day in the history of research ethics, and making sure that we protect these ones, the respondents, even with the help of ethical review committees. Another thing which might be lastly will be ethical review committees in the global south. So as I had stated back in my earlier conversation, was about the countries where we have conducted research before. So I would kind of mention them. On top of my mind would be in Kenya. We've conducted research in Malawi, South Africa, Uganda, Nigeria, and even India. So, and even Somalia. So what we've seen is we have very different ways of how they are managing the ethical process. A country like Ethiopia and Somalia, where we have largely done a lot of research, we've seen that the ethical process kind of very complicated. A researcher getting any ethical review board to approve or to review their project before they are being implemented, it means that you now need to go to the government, you need to be affiliated to a local institution, which kind of there's so much bureaucracy surrounding the process, which at some point now even researchers give up in long run. But when it comes now to countries like Kenya or Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, what we've seen is the ethical process is, I would say, transparent, not the way we want really, but now it's kind of like transparent comparing to other countries in Africa. And you will notice that their information is online. The click of a button on your computer, you will find that information that you want in these countries. And talking about maybe in Kenya, what we've seen is we've had very robust ethical review committees. When they just don't give review approvals, they must make sure that they have monitored the projects in the field or in the lab or what, wherever, and making sure that only those documents that were approved are being used in the study implementation, and making sure that the participants who are participating in the study are well taken care of, their rights and the welfare are being respected, and we do not have as many conflict in the communities where the project is being implemented, or social norms. Sometimes we've seen randomized control trials even having several issues, social spillovers in the field. So they are really well taken care of. So I've seen ethical review committees in Kenya really are on top of the game, making sure that those projects are well implemented as it should be.
Go.
So as I finalize in today's conversation, talking about ethical considerations, we've spoken about the participants, and we've seen that much of what we've talked about is surrounding the participants in terms of sampling. How do you sample your target participants? We've talked about confidentiality and privacy, the data that you're going to collect from your participants. How do you ensure that we do not have breach of this confidentiality and privacy? We've spoken about ethical review committees. So at some point, some countries may have very opaque way of getting your project to be approved, but now there are several countries which now have transparent processes that you can even see it on their online portals. And then we've spoken about the process of voluntary and consenting, and this is kind of like a very major issue. Where we now need to talk about translations, and we need also to talk about local contextualization. And then lastly is about research design, which now covers like everything. When now you've designed your research, you've designed your experiment, ready now to be implemented in the field. Now, do you have the participants, the communities, everyone who is involved in the study at your heart? Or do you want now to be even in do things out of kind of like an out of book? And then lastly will be about benefits and risk of harm, making sure that the participants understand the benefits of participating in the study, and also any harm that might be considered when they now participate in the study. And researchers must make sure that they minimize any risk of harm from participants when they're designing their study, when they're implementing the study, and also when they're kind of like making sure that the study is very successful in the eyes of the participants, in the eyes of the community, in the eyes of even the funders or the donors. And so I have come to an end of our presentation or conference presentation today, where I was talking about the ethical considerations in terms of behavioral science projects in Global South, And from me, I will say thank you very much for giving me this particular honor and honor to come and maybe speak to everyone who joined us. And I also want to appreciate and give my sincerest gratitude to Warwick University. Sorry, I meant Warwick Behavioural Insights team for organizing and making sure that this summit has been success. And from everyone at Busara Center for Behavioral Economics, we say thank you very much. And it has been so amazing to be part of this Summit 2021. Asanteni sana and goodbye.